Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Shinnon Fakri on the podcast. I can't believe I got that right, actually, because, that was one of those where I was just like, there's no way that I'm going to get this right. But I guess, everyone gets lucky every once in a while, but she's calling to us all the way from Georgia, where, I don't even want to ask what the weather's like, because it's 5 degrees up here again in Minnesota, so, yeah, we're having a blast up here, but she's a bodybuilder, and she's, a mom, and, I don't know how motivating that is, but, like, there's photos of her on her abs, like, on her Instagram page, and that's when I was like, I need to have her on this show then, because she has, like, some secrets that she needs to share with everyone, but most importantly, she's our current guest, Shannon. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I usually ask what the weather's like, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to depress myself. So to start things off, why don't you just give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to become a bodybuilder?
Sure. It's not really that groundbreaking of a story, unfortunately. I was always an athlete. Like, I grew up, my dad was super into athletics. I remember going to the track with him when I was like 5 and watching him run, and it just blew my mind. So I originally got my start in college as a track runner, and then I was a rugby player for 14 years. Took a beating at 33. I had my 4th knee surgery and had to hang up the cleats. So I was still working out every.
It took you 4 of them to finally realize, like, hey, maybe this isn't the sport for me.
I'm persistent.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't even the knee surgery so much as the head injuries. My doctor had that conversation, like, you keep banging your head, you're not going to be able to do that for much longer. But I was still into the gym every day, and actually one morning I would go before work at like 5 a.m. This older gentleman came up to me, and he said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to do a competition. And at the time, I was like, not for me, bro. I like pizza and beer too much. Not going to do it. But I went to an athletes meeting at a local gym, and I was like, you know what? I got nothing else to do. And I was missing competing. I needed something. I needed to scratch that itch. So I jumped into it, and that was 2017. I was 35. And I got my pro card at my first show, and I just fell in love with the process and absolutely loved the stage. And honestly, for me, it was the women, and then experience with the other women. You think you're doing something that's kind of along the lines of a beauty competition in a sense, that it's going to be petty, and it really wasn't. These girls were super motivating and very inspiring, and to see these other women that were awesome mothers that were 40, 50 years old, crushing it on stage, I just wanted more of that in my life.
That is awesome. Yeah, and going from rugby to bodybuilding, that's a little bit different. Hopefully it's not as taxing on your body, although bodybuilding can be very taxing on your body as well. But yeah, that is awesome. But when you were getting into this sport as well, were there any reservations that you had about it? Because unfortunately, there are so many myths about this sport in the general public because it's not really the most popular sport. Most people don't really know that much about it. When I say that I have bodybuilders on, a lot of the reactions I get are, oh, those are people that just work out a lot and they go on stage and they pose. And it's like, you got about 1% of it down. But were there any reservations that you had about the sport, or were you one of those people where you just want to dive right in and see what happens?
I'm usually an all or nothing person. So once I made up my mind I was going to do it, that was it. But there were, especially from my family, my dad is always been my biggest supporter. And initially he had concerns. He was originally, it was, how big do you want to be? Are you going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger? Are you going to start taking steroids? And then it was, how skinny are you going to be? Do you even eat? And once he came to the show and he saw what it was all about, it changed his entire perspective. He once again is my biggest supporter. He comes to my shows. He's awesome. There was definitely, I didn't know anything about the sport when I got into it, and I learned a lot through the process. The way I prepped for my first show in 2017 is nothing like I prep now. And if I'm totally honest, if I had to prep that way every time, I would have never done it again. It was that very cookie cutter, boiled chicken and rice, crash diet, lots of cardio. And now I love the food I eat throughout my entire prep. At the end, I wish there was more. There's no way to deny it. I'm starving in the last few weeks, but I actually enjoy the process now.
I just love how your dad thought that you're going to get like Arnold Schwarzenegger, where it's like a lot of people do not understand the genetic differences, first of all, between men and women. And second of all, that's not, if you do get like Arnold Schwarzenegger, yeah, you would be a trillionaire, like we talked about before. But like I mentioned before, there's always that myth that a lot of women have that, they'll walk into the gym and even just looking at a dumbbell, they'll just bulk up immediately. Was that something that you feared at all? And even if you didn't, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
So I do hear it all the time. And I like to tell people if that was the case, I would already be 3-time world champ. If all I had to do was crush some 10-pound weights all day or eat a little extra protein. I wish it was that easy. I don't think I can't think of a time I ever feared lifting heavy. I think my biggest fear was with the knee injuries. And since I've rehabbed it properly, I love lifting heavy. I love that feeling of being strong. Again, I wish I could just do 10 pounds and get really big, but that's just not the reality. I mean, to your point, that women and men are different. The amount of testosterone that I produce versus a man. And even then, men still have to train extremely hard to put on that type of size.
Even with those knee injuries, man, I don't even know if I'd ever get underneath a bar to do a squat to us. So that takes much. That's more courage to you, even just doing that alone in and of itself. But when it comes to abs, did you always have abs like growing up, or was that one thing that you just realized when you started bodybuilding that there's something that like you are very blessed with?
I am very blessed with that. And honestly, I think it goes back to running track when I was young. That type of explosive movement with track, it's so core dominant. And that is a little bit genetic. Even after having a baby, I went 10 months back on stage with a six pack. I have good core strength, but I definitely train. I don't do a whole ton of abs. It's honestly diet, unfortunately.
Were you one of those people though when you were like 8 months pregnant, you still had like a six pack and stuff like that? I've seen some of those people on there, and I'm just like, what's going on here?
I had obliques. I always had throughout the entire pregnancy, like some defined obliques, but I was enormous when I was pregnant. I was almost 200 pounds.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, because we have a lot of bodybuilders that have like already had kids and then they decide to go into the sport, or they're doing the sport before they have kids, so they don't have to worry about that. But you were in the middle of your career when you had a kid. How do you deal with sort of that mental toll of like you gain all this weight? It's sort of like it's an it's an even bigger off season than a normal off season would be. So how do you deal with that mentally, just trying to regain all that stuff that you might have lost during the pregnancy?
So, in all honesty, this is gonna sound crazy, but I feel like pregnancy was the best thing that happened for my physique when it comes to bodybuilding. Because a couple of things happen, especially when you're bodybuilding and you start to make this, it became very quickly the center of my life. It became my career. I got that pro card. There's a certain expectation that you have to look a certain way all year long, and it's really hard to put on muscle while still trying to stay lean. So being pregnant kind of gave me that grace period where I could really eat the way I needed to gain muscle. And the best thing I did for myself, I'm talking about myths, is I lifted heavy my entire pregnancy. Like the week I delivered, I did I squatted 205 for like 4 sets of 10 just because I could. I was so strong when I was pregnant, and it was the extra calories, all that those good hormones your body's pumping out to create a human. I just capitalized on that, and I trained 6 days a week every week while I was pregnant.
Were those gym owners coming up and being like, "Okay, you need to stop now. We don't want to have the baby born like on the on the mat here or something like that." Because we've had people that have actually had gym owners come up to them like their last week of pregnancy and be like, "You can work out at home now, please," or something like that. Just
I was actually very fortunate. I worked at a private gym called the Fitness Factory in Rhode Island, and the owner there is phenomenal. I did joke with him though that I was like, I hope my water breaks here just to watch you have that meltdown.
okay. So, are you originally from Rhode Island?
No, my husband is. I grew up. I'm a military brat, so I grew up overseas in England primarily with my family, and then did a bunch of moving around.
I was gonna say, how did you not pick up that accent then living there?
Oh God, my husband is the thickest Rhode Island accent.
Okay, well, so first of all, you can talk to your husband about this after the podcast, but Rhode Island, Roger Williams is the guy that's credited as like discovering sort of Rhode Island, and he didn't discover it, but he was just the first white guy that really just went there and planted a flag and said, "Yeah, this is Rhode Island," basically. And then everyone's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm a direct descendant of his."
Really?
Like 450 years later, yeah, or something like that. So we did the genealogy stuff like 20 years ago when I was like 7 years old, and we found that out. Like, there's always been rumors that was the case, and then we finally like did our genealogy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you actually are." So yep. So whenever someone brings up Rhode Island, I got to bring that up. I've only been there once though, and but they have a lot of stuff named after him too. So I was like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
something."
everything's named after him.
Yep. So yep, your talk. I mean, I think I'm like one of like a. There's probably like tens of thousands of them there out there now, though. But it's just I'm one of those few. But yeah, so that's my little tidbit into that. But I mean, this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and most people do not understand that because they'll just notice the physical changes and they'll just say, "Oh wow, you look amazing." They don't notice the mental changes that have happened as well, and those are 100, basically like 1,000 times actually more important than any of the physical changes that'll happen to you. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
So that's the most interesting part, and it's been wild, honestly. I mean, going from being a performance athlete to an aesthetics athlete is very, very different. The training's very different, and obviously rugby is extremely demanding on your body, and I played at a very high level. It was an amazing experience, but the training for bodybuilding is actually mentally a lot more taxing. When I was playing rugby, I could eat whatever I wanted. There was no thought to that. Now the working out is only 1% of my day. It's all of the thing. It's the rest of the day, planning my meals, prepping my meals, making sure I'm hitting my steps. And then two, especially for women in this sport, because after the show, my last show in December, I was 6% body fat when I got on stage. So I was super shredded, and obviously I can't stay that lean. It's not healthy. And there is some hormonal imbalances that happen after you go that low. But mentally it's really hard, and emotionally it's hard to let go of being that lean. And even at a athletic physique, you can still look at yourself and think, oh my god, I'm huge. And so mentally it can be, and I've gotten better with it as the more times I've done it. But I also coach girls, and it's one of the things I'm most mindful of. Is the reverse, I think, is actually much harder than the prep itself, because mentally and emotionally that's a much more challenging thing.
Well, and I mean, especially a part of the off season too, and just a part of your journey in general. That's one of the most important things is nutrition, and it's not talked about really as much as it should be. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you've made as you've progressed in this sport?
Oh my god, it made me realize how much I didn't know about nutrition in reality. Even being an athlete my whole life, and growing up in a really healthy household, I didn't fully understand the impact. And there's a total difference between eating healthy and eating to lose weight. People would say to me, well, it's fruit. You can't have it. No, because it's loaded in carbs, and I'm low carb right now. So it really became an understanding of exactly what the makeup of food is, understanding that you can get things that fit your macros, but they may not be serving your body. It's made me more, not just mindful, but aware of the food I eat, and not just, the macro portion of it, but the health value of it. And it's made me, especially with my daughter now, very mindful of what she eats. I'm that crazy mother at daycare where I'm like, I don't want her to have veggie straws. I don't want her to have a Go-Gurt. I had to get a note from my pediatrician to say that I was allowed to substitute her food. Just because once I became aware of the stuff, that the added sugar and the other things that were in that. I mean, don't get me wrong. We will put down a pizza on a Friday night, no problem. I love my wine, but I am much, much more aware of the nutritional value of the food, not just the caloric value.
Yeah, it is amazing how much that food really does play into, like you said, with your abs. I mean, it's like most of it is, just the nutrition side of it, which a lot of people don't get. And it's something that really takes its toll on a lot of people when they first realize that. And the fact that, like, you're going to need to be eating a lot more food than you were eating, even if you were the most out of shape person on the planet, a lot of the times, just because you're burning so much. And that's another thing. But we mentioned that your abs were one thing that, you always sort of had, and they took off. What was one body part that just dragged behind that you had to train to oblivion to really get it to catch up to everything else?
I'd say this is probably common for women. I know I'm not alone in this. Legs, glutes especially, which is shocking because I was a sprinter, which is all hamstrings and glutes, but I carry my fat right around my bum. And especially in the off season, that's the first place it wants to go. And it is, I train legs 3 days a week very intensely. That is the one place, and I know, again, I'm probably preaching to the choir for women here. That is the place that I have to work the hardest, and it's the last place the body fat comes off.
Oh yeah, legs and shoulders are the two for out of all the research that I've done on this podcast. But yeah, that's me too, because I'm 6'3", so my legs and my lower body, I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they won't even gain an ounce. So it's a never ending. Don't even get me started on calves. If you start talking about calf, I had one guest who then put her calf up on the table just to show off to me, and I almost kicked her off the damn podcast right then and there because I was like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, those are the ones for me where, like, yeah, I can do as much training as I want, and they'll gain probably about like 1% of what the normal person would gain in that same amount of time. So it's just frustration upon frustration. But hey, that's the life of fitness for so many people.
Keeps me hungry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just like, yeah, I could do 10,000 calf races and they might gain 1/10 of a millionth of a percent of anything. So yeah, it's just it's the struggle bus is really for sure real. But I mean, I'm talking about even more of the mental side of the things. I mean, body dysmorphia is a real thing that happens to a lot of people in the sport, and the times on this podcast that I try not to laugh or when I have some of the biggest people on the planet on and they talk about like, I don't really think I look that good right now, and I'm just like, and then it's like I got to remind them it's like you look better than 99.99% of the population. But have you had to deal with any of that? And if so, do you have any tips or tricks on how to better deal with that? Because that's one thing that I mean, the general public has enough body dysmorphia as it is, but when you get into bodybuilding, most people think that like, oh yeah, since you look so great, you shouldn't really have that problem. But for some people, it even gets worse.
I've seen it get exponentially worse for people. I'd say that my after my first two shows in 2017, they did shows back to back. I didn't have the greatest nutrition going into plan. Like my program into that was really not the best, especially for post show. I had no reverse diet, and I became was the biggest I'd ever been. I got married 8 weeks later. I don't even have any of those wedding pictures in my house because I hate the way I looked in them. And I wouldn't wear anything that wasn't long sleeve, so I'm sweating all summer long. I would say the biggest thing that I found was talking about it. The more I shared it with people, I realized I wasn't alone. Um, Honestly, it's just talking about it. I kept it very secretive back then. I didn't tell anybody about my struggles. I had because of the hormone imbalances, I was having these insane hunger binges and sugar binges, and I would binge eat, and I didn't share that with anybody because I had never in my life struggled with weight or with food. And at 36 years old, now I have this issue, and I was very ashamed. I didn't talk about it. And it's something that when I coach my girls, I tell them like we still talk every week after the show because it's so important. These feelings are normal. You are not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. A little bit of binging is normal. It's about getting in front of it, talking about it, being open about it. I would say is the biggest tip I have. And yet you can't understanding that you cannot stay that lean as much as you want to. Those abs were so cool. I can't stay that lean.
What is your go-to binge food?
Oh God. Oh, I love sweets. I'm a sweet person. I wasn't until I started bodybuilding actually. Sweets. I remember my big binge in 20 after my show in 2017 was I found some Halloween candy. Mind you, it was May. I found Halloween candy and those Malteser balls. They call them Whoppers here. I don't even like those, but I put 18 packets of 3 into a jar of peanut butter and just ate them. Yeah, my go-to now that things tend to be a little bit more balanced, is sushi. I can eat my body weight in sushi.
I'm not gonna lie, I had like 8,000 calories during the Super Bowl this last week, but that's, my mom always makes cupcakes and stuff like that, and then 1 becomes 5, and then 5 become 10, and yeah, it's that. Let's just say, I gain a little bit, but I also lose a little bit, and it goes in and out fast sometimes. I'll leave it at that. But that's another topic for another day there. But I mean, one thing that isn't talked about as much as it should be as well is the posing, because most people don't understand that that's the hardest thing for so many of the competitors that I have on. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than the working out. What has your experience with posing been like?
It is still to this day my biggest challenge and probably my biggest weakness. Coming from a rugby background where I just run real fast and hit things, this was a very, very big change for me. And having to, especially with the WBFF, it's very sexy, it's very glamorous. That was so far outside my wheelhouse. I still work with a coach. Toby Harrison, he's the best in the business. I still work with a coach every time I get ready for a show. It is the most challenging part. People underestimate that. Walking in 5-inch stilettos, wearing almost nothing in front of a crowd of people, is a very challenging thing. I enjoy it now, but it's one of those things that the diet, the exercise, that part for me comes a little bit naturally. The posing is very difficult.
And out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Oh, I like back poses because I don't have to worry about my face is doing. It's very easy. I don't have to try and be sexy or make a cute smile or try to be pouty. I just turn around and flex. That's my favorite. Front pose, I like.
I cannot tell you how many times I've had to tell people, like, when they mention, yeah, like, just like you said, like the back pose, I was like, yeah, well, you don't have to have your smile down. That's the one thing, because most people don't understand that these jaw muscles are some of the most sore things after a show. So, yeah, and like my back was the one thing that took off for me. So if I ever did compete, that would be the thing as well. But that conditioning that it takes to pose is one thing that's also not talked about as much as it should be, because the human body is not meant to be in that flexive a state for that long a period of time. How long do you think that it really took you to even develop sort of that muscle maturity that it takes to really be able to hold a pose for as long as they have you on? Because we've had guests, sometimes for like 15 minutes at the longest they might have you on, and other times, you're only on for like 30, 60 seconds. But how long did it take you before you really felt comfortable being able to hold those poses for as long as you might sometimes be required to?
I'd say it's still a work in progress, honestly. As far as comfort level goes, I've definitely gotten better this year, especially. I've seen huge improvements in my posing. I think a lot of that comes with confidence too. But then also, our posing is a little bit different. We're still flex, but not to the level of these girls in the IFBB have to really hold that flex. So I can't imagine how difficult that is. But your lower back, your feet, your face, everything is cramping by the time you get off stage.
For a lot of people that don't understand, like, you're not in the NPC, you're not in the IFBB. What are the differences between the federation that you're in and the other federations that I cover a lot of? Because I've had a few people in your federation on, but it's like maybe 5 to 10%.
Well, obviously the federation I'm in is the best. I'm biased. I What I like about it though is you work so hard. You put months and months into this one day, and I want to get up there and I want it to be spectacular. And the WBFF does that better than anybody. So I compete in Vegas with Bellagio is one of my shows. I just competed at a casino in Atlantic City this past December. So it's a great place for your family to come to. They're not going to a high school gym. They're coming to a casino. It's an event. There's lights, there's music. They have it up on the big screen. So we put all that effort in, and they really do an amazing job showcasing that and making it a really spectacular event. And then the divisions are a little bit different. So the NBC and IFBB tend to be a little bit more traditional bodybuilding. They're a little bit bigger, more conditioned. The look for the WBFF for the females is more feminine. It's a little bit softer, which also played well into the physique I wanted to walk around with on a day-to-day basis. So for me, the WBFF was a really good fit. And again, I just love how they make it into this spectacular event.
When you're walking on that stage after putting on the months upon months of hard work and a prep, because, like, let's be honest, preps are not fun. What is that moment like for you when you finally get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked so hard on?
I mean, if you ever see any of the videos from my shows, I'm having the time of my life. It is so much fun. Um, it's nerve wracking. I still get nervous. I still get the shakes before I go up. This last one, especially. But for me, it's just all of that hard work, and the stress is kind of gone because it's done. What it's going to be, what it's going to be at this point. There's nothing else you can do. Um, it's just a spectacular. It's a really amazing moment for me, and you get to be out there and you can hear your friends and your family cheering you on. It's a really special moment. I love getting up on stage. It makes it all worth it, believe it or not.
That's the one thing that makes me appreciate, these athletes a lot more than most other athletes, is the fact that, like, yeah, they're on stage sometimes for what, like 30, 60 seconds, and they work just as hard, if not harder, than most other athletes. And it's like they do all that just for that little bit of recognition. So that to me is just one of the most impressive parts of the sport, along with all the dieting and all the other
Seems
stuff.
like madness, right? All
Oh,
that.
I was like, this is the greatest. Like, if only this was a business. Like, and the fact that you don't make money too doing this is like, this might be the greatest Ponzi scheme that's ever lived. But it's like, no, and it just goes to show you that these people, they don't do it for the recognition a lot of the time, and they don't do it for that. They just do it because they like it and they like how it makes them feel and they like the results. And that's a positive part, at least, about the sport. And I find that a majority of people are in that same camp. But first of all, what is your time management like? Because, like, you have a regular job, you have a daughter, you have bodybuilding, you have like 3 full-time jobs. So how are you able to keep your time management? I mean, with two of those things, I would drive myself probably crazy.
So it is definitely discipline at the end of the day. It's about being organized, being disciplined. Um, so, sorry, my husband just came home, which is very
No
nice.
worries at all. Not a problem.
So the discipline, I have to be very structured, super, super scheduled. especially once I had the baby. And right now, since we just moved, she's with me 24/7. So I'm managing my business while making lunch, and it's just having a set schedule. Being very mindful of time management is huge for me, and gym with a daycare is clutch.
That too. That's one thing that we've heard, especially. Yeah, that is the difference between life and death for a lot of moms, especially out there. Is you gotta have that daycare. But I mean, like, let's be completely honest. Like, you're not the average looking woman, especially as you get closer and closer to a show. I sort of compare it to being like a mini celebrity, where like if you were to walk out in public, you do draw people's extra added attention just because it's human nature when they see something that's not of the normal. They'll just be like, oh wow, that's interesting. How have you dealt with that? Especially as your career has gone on. Do you find it's gotten easier for you to sort of just deal with some of that extra added attention that you might get?
Yes, it's gotten a lot easier. Um, it still baffles me when somebody comes up to me like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram." I'm just like, "Me?" Um, it's definitely gotten easier, and honestly, the overwhelmingly, that it's just people being very supportive and very encouraging. So it makes it super easy, and it's kind of fun.
No, that too, and I mean, that makes it so much easier, especially the positive support that a lot of people tend to have, but, I mean, I hate car
Side note on that, though, I will say the part that's I usually forget about because I get so it's I rather focus on the positives, but I do get, and it's mostly men, interestingly, that come up to me when I get closer to a show and tell me that I have too much muscle for a woman. I'm too manly. I actually had a gentleman when I was getting ready for my show in April. I was 10 months postpartum. Come up to me at the gym and told me, "Why does a woman need to do pull ups? There's no need for it, and I'll never be able to have a baby being that muscular." And I was like, "Sir, I have a 9-month old."
Yeah, that's just I mean, I always tell my response to that would always be like, "Well, what kind of men are you hanging around with if you think that I look like one?" So that's introduce me then, please. I'd like to meet some of these people and see what but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of ill informed, and yeah, a lot of it comes from men too. And yeah, that's a topic too, where a lot of times, like especially with these Instagram accounts that these people that I talk to have, I would probably last about a day on Instagram before I just get disgusted and break my phone and just become like a hermit that lives in some cave, up in the hills somewhere. But yeah, that again is just especially to the females that have on more power to them that they pull through with that because I mean it can get bad at times, but I mean I gotta talk about cardio because I hate it more than life itself. And you used to be a runner, and that's a form of mental illness, everyone. So I hope that she got the help that she needs. But when I say cardio, I mean like actual running. Like I can walk for forever, and I do like to go on walks because I live pretty close to a nature reserve. So it's like 10 miles of trails. So I some like during the summer I like to try to go out for once once a day. I'll go out there for maybe like an hour if I have the free time. But what is your relationship like with cardio? Because unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you sort of have to sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio.
Wait, it's funny you say that because I actually do way less cardio now than I did before I started bodybuilding. So before I would do, and a lot of that was just to, because you can't out train a bad diet, but you can help keep it at bay a little bit. So, especially before I started bodybuilding, before I was really on point with my nutrition, I just run to kind of make up for the amount of wine I drank the night before. Now I do very limited cardio and it's very strategic. I tend to leverage it towards the end of a prep. I do a little bit now just for my general health. I'm 40, almost 41, so I'm just trying to keep my heart healthy. So I'll run once, maybe twice a week, but I do so little cardio now. And I try to keep it to a minimum and leverage it wisely towards the end so I don't have to continue to cut my calories, but I can increase my output. And my coach, Allie, has been amazing with that. Um, and then the steps, I just make sure I am active, I'm moving. I get at least, well, right now we're trying to keep my steps to 8,000 so I can put on some muscle. But typically, when I'm prepping, it's between 10 and 15,000 steps a day that I'm shooting for, which is actually much more challenging than it sounds.
I got a job that I work in a warehouse, so I achieve that every day, without even walking anywhere else. But yeah, I've had, my record is 73,000, which
Wow.
is, yeah, that was a 16-hour shift where I was just walking the entire time. And that was one where I told the story on the last podcast, but it deserves to be retold again. My feet were wet, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's funny. And I took it was blood.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, yeah, I never, I mean, and I've had days too where I've done like 35, 40,000 where I'll if I like to go, that's my de-stressor is like going on super long walks. So sometimes like if I have a really stressful day, I'll go out and I'll walk, and then that walk will turn into like a 3.5 to 4 hour long, like just walk just to do it. And, I'll get like 35,000 steps, and yeah, I'll won't be able to get out of bed the next morning, but hey, it was worth, and I've done that only about a handful of times in my life. So it's not anything that really occurs, maybe like once a year or something like that, when I'm just like, okay, I just need to get my head cleared and stuff like that. So yeah, I do that. But yeah, if it was running, yeah, I would last a couple blocks and I'd be like, yeah, this is boring and dumb. Yeah.
From someone who was a runner for so long, I actually really don't like to run anymore. Now I do it because again, I want to keep my heart healthy, but it's just not. I don't enjoy it like I used to. I used to run for miles. Now I'm like 20 minutes. That's good.
She saw the light finally. I mean, I'm glad that she was able to overcome her disease and everything like that, and just realize that, like, hey, because like I have a friend that runs marathons, and I've always wanted to go to the end of the marathon and just have a sign that says "You didn't have to do this" or something like that, and just something, because it's like come on, man. But the hardest thing for so many people to really maintain during this lifestyle is sleep. And I mean, your sleep can become so bipolar just when you get from your prep season to your off season, and being a mom too, where I mean, you kind of have to be on weighted knee for your children, just because, that's just how it is. But what does your sleep schedule look like now? Because I mean, that's the one thing where I look at it and I'm just like, I don't know how some of these people function.
Yeah, that is actually one of the biggest challenges. And especially these last two preps, I did them mostly as a single parent. My husband's in the military; he was away, and so I had to be the one to get up with the baby. Um, Fortunately, we're so lucky. She sleeps like a rock star. Like, she usually goes to bed around 6:30, gets up around 6:30. But it's again comes back to me being disciplined. I would love to sit up and just watch some mindless TV until 10 o'clock and just unplug. But I know I've got to get to sleep because I've got to get up at 4. So I have to. I have a reminder on my watch at 7:30. It reminds me that my bedtime's in a half hour, and I start winding down. And it is challenging because when my husband has been home, it has eaten into some of our personal time. So he's like, "You're seriously going to bed? It's not even dark out." And I have to, because I have to get at least 8 hours of sleep because it's so important for my recovery. And then the other challenge is, as I get deeper into my cut, my body doesn't want to sleep because it's just trying to send me hunger cues, like get up and go eat something. So I found a natural. Actually, my assistant coach is a nutritional. What is it? Nutritional nutritionist or something. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what it's called. Holistic nutritionist, and she put me onto this like natural sleep aid, and it's been honestly a game changer. Helped me sleep through those last few weeks of prep, and my sleep has been phenomenal.
I mean, just to prove how even at 27, I would probably not be a good parent. One of my friends had a kid, and literally they would not sleep at all. And I was literally just telling them, I was like, just crush up a melatonin and put it in its milk or something like that. And they're like, it's not good for babies. And I was like, oh, okay, well,
Okay, but they thought about it. I promise you, and I'll
yep.
tell you, because she was firstborn, we went through this period where she just wouldn't sleep. She would, and um, that will make you all kinds of insane. Uh, and even at one of my biggest concerns when I was pregnant was, what if this kid doesn't sleep, because I need to sleep.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do not know how parents deal with that, especially. And I was just like, yeah, especially when you really think about like the older generation. Like my grandpa had, by the time he was my age, he had what? He ended up having 7 kids, but he had already had like 5 of them, I think. And this is a guy that was already at my age. He had already been in the military for 2 years, served 2 years in Korea. He got his master's degree in computers, and like it's like, yeah. So that's, I cannot imagine how they did what they did, and especially so yeah, more power to him. But yeah, that sleep thing. I mean, it's, you try to work out getting no sleep. I did that twice in college, and both times I lasted about halfway through the workout, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is stupid. Like, I'm just gonna go home and I don't care if I have to hit myself with a rock. I'm gonna knock myself out some way and try to fall asleep. But
The most overlooked things in performance or aesthetic sports, and I know I personally.
or just in life in general.
Yes, yes. In my younger days, I was like, "Nah, I'll sleep when I'm dead." And again, once I got into bodybuilding and started to really understand the importance of sleep, the difference it made to my physique, it was staggering.
Oh yeah, the biggest changes, and I've always said one of the best feelings on the planet is after you get that proper amount of sleep and you wake up feeling like a superhero, basically, and you're just like, oh. Yeah, that's one of those days where you know that things are gonna go all right. And I honestly haven't had that in like months because it's just been ugh with work and with winter. Oh my god! And plus, no one's gonna wake up that early in the winter. It's like, what's the point? It's just all that. So would have been some. I mean, moving to Georgia, where it's a little bit warmer of a climate, would have been some of the biggest changes that you've felt since you moved.
Honestly, it's so much easier to get my steps. I'm not having to be on a treadmill all day. I can take the baby out and go for a walk. I'm just naturally inclined to be more active, go out and do more things. It's not as hard to get up in the morning. I don't mind it. It's easier to get myself moving towards the gym first thing. The weather makes a huge difference. I am still thrown off by how nice people are, and I didn't realize how much of a New Englander I was until I got here. And a really sweet older lady in the neighborhood saw me walking, started up a conversation, asked where I lived, and my immediate reaction was, "Why? What are you, a serial killer? You writing a book? Why do you need to know where I live?"
Yep. That's the one thing that a lot of people, especially being in the upper Midwest, where it's just like that, like all the time. A lot of people, yeah, especially they're thrown off sometimes by it, where they're just like, "What are you trying to sell?" And it's like, just trying to have a conversation with. That's why I like with me too. Yeah, if I sometimes have like some people from other parts of the country on, they don't. They're they're surprised. Like as soon as I talk to, I'm one of the most disarming people of all time. Like as soon as I open my mouth, literally. So a lot of people like they don't know what this podcast is all about, and then the second that phone call starts, and then I just say, "Oh, hello," and then they're just like, "Okay, yeah, this is completely different." So I bet you probably had that same reaction as well. Where the first moment you talk to me, you're like, yeah. So it's a blessing and a curse because I am that one guy at the party where that one person that has no one to talk to will try to talk to me for 5 hours, and I'm too nice to tell him to leave me alone. So I'll just be like, yeah, okay, I came here to try to talk to that girl, but whatever. I guess you can bug me the whole time about your ant farm that you have at your house or whatever the hell you're trying to talk to me about. So yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, like a lot of things, in life. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man, that women could do it barefoot.
Yes.
I mean, I love my shoes, don't get me wrong, but hitting my poses would be a hell of a lot easier if I wasn't in 6-inch stilettos.
I have said that a million times. Like, why do you make them wear high heels? I know it's trying to make them look more feminine and stuff like that, but it's like, why? They're at the leanest part of their lives. A lot of them are about an inch away from passing out on that stage, and then you're making them on high heels, like try to walk on that. I've always told everyone, if you want to break the internet, have the guy bodybuilders walk out on those high heels. It'd be the funniest thing ever. But I mean, yeah, especially when it's like as you get closer, like figure and stuff like that, where it's like the figure competitors now are basically physique competitors back, even like 5-10 years ago. So it's like you're having them wear those high heels, and it's just, yeah, for me it would be to get rid of the high heels too as well, and also like just to pay them, pay the athletes more. It's like if you're a pro at this sport, you should not have to have like a regular full-time job. Like it should be just that's just my hope that they have at least, and also exposure too, because it's like these shows used to be on ESPN, and now they have what the cornhole championships they had on right before the Super Bowl, and it's like, yeah, cornhole, a sport that you play when you're absolutely shit faced in your backyard at a barbecue, is a sport that's worthy for ESPN now. So, yeah, I don't
That's a better answer than mine. I would like to use your answer, please.
absolutely, and yeah, that's a lot. And also, I mean, if someone were to also walk up to you and say, like, I'm thinking about giving bodybuilding a try, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give them?
Um, I mean, it's a tough one because I would have to know the person a little bit, think long and hard about it, and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that this is something you really want to do, because you're going to give up a lot of your social life. You're going to give up a lot of your free time. It's going to be really hard towards the end. No matter, you can have the best prep. I have amazing preps. It's still really hard at the end. So I would say make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and something you really want to do, and you're not just doing it because your friend is doing it.
Or you're doing it because you want to fix, like maybe some body image issues that you have, and then like you said before, it ends up becoming 10 times worse than it even was. And I've heard plenty of stories on that of people that I've even talked to, and their friends, and yeah. So that's one thing that I would talk about as well, just when it comes to that. And yeah, like unfortunately everyone is different too, so it's like you're not gonna get the same results as everyone else. So that's another thing that I'd caution people to, where it's like just because you want to be just like someone and look just like them, you can train like they do, you can eat like they do, you're not going to look just like them. I mean, that's just, unfortunately the case.
Most of these people have been doing it I've been at this for 20 years. I was got my personal training certificate for the first time in 2005, so I've been doing this for a really, really long time. Some people are like, "Oh, I want abs like you." I'm like, "I've been at this for 20 years."
I was what, like in fourth or fifth grade then, or something like that, just to give everyone an update. I was the little elementary school kid that, yeah. So that's weird to think about sometimes, especially like the bodybuilders are like, "Yeah, I started competing in 1991," and it was like, well, I was -3 at that age, so I don't even know. I hadn't even materialized into anything really at all. So yeah, it's crazy to think about. But what would you say is probably the biggest misconception that you get from a lot of people as a female bodybuilder?
Easy that I don't eat anything. That's the number. Oh, you well, so you don't eat. Of course I eat. If I had to live, of course I eat, and I actually eat more
I just get
than
bigger and
most.
more muscular not eating anything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I joke like towards the end, I'm living on air and sunshine, but the buildup, and right now I'm eating 2,500 calories a day. I eat a lot of food, and I think that's the biggest misconception is people think that to get muscular and to then get lean, that you just eat nothing and you crash diet.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is also just an ever evolving sport too, where even though you're in WBFF, the results and the physiques have changed so drastically even since you got started. I mean, it's night and day sometimes for a lot of things. Where do you think that it's going, and where would you like the sport to go? Let's say maybe like 5 years down the road, because just like even if you do a year by year comparison of people that have won shows, like it changes so drastically even in a span of a year.
Yeah. So I would love to see it continue. I like the way that it's going. I like how muscular the physiques are becoming. I really do like that. I appreciate that. I understand the hard work it takes to get to that. And believe it or not, in a lot of senses, it favors the older athletes because we've been at it a little bit longer. So I like the direction it's going. I like to see it continue to go in that direction, and let's celebrate a fit muscular physique instead of shying away from that, or again implying that women can't be muscular or we're too muscular, we look like men. It's still feminine, it's still sexy, and I like the direction that it's going in.
Trying for an 8 pack now? Is that just your ultimate goal?
10.
A
Why
10? Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one with a 10, but who knows? If I would have bet out of all the guests I've had in the podcast, you're one of like the 5 guests that I would put money down for the first person to achieve that now. But I mean, when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to talk to you a year from now and just see what you've been up to, where would you like to be at just in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at in just your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
So by this time next year, I will be competing again. This year, it's either going to be Worlds in August or Atlantic City again in December. I would like to have won my crown. That is a goal. I came in second in my last show. I am very focused on growing my physique and getting up there and getting that title. So that's a big goal for me with the WBFF in this next upcoming year. So, and then on that, with my business, I'd like to continue to grow the girls that I coach. I've taken on an assistant coach this year. We have a really big team coming out in April at the Fitness Atlantic show in Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. So continue to work with these athletes and grow that team. And I would like to eventually have 11 teams in 11 different WBFF shows throughout the year between New England and down here in Georgia in this area. So that's a big goal over the next year.
What is the hardest thing about being a coach, and what is the most rewarding thing about being a coach?
Hardest thing about being a coach is definitely dealing with the emotional ups and downs of
Let's be honest, you're a therapist basically too, on top
yes,
of everything.
yep, yep, and that can, and then I would say, you get the comparison. These girls are comparing themselves to even other girls on the team, and that can be very difficult. But the most rewarding thing is when you see an athlete and a female just really love the way that they look, embrace that lifestyle, and then continue to live that lifestyle. Months and years after the show, I have a girl I worked with in 2019 that just has continued to count macros and live a really good, healthy lifestyle and build an amazing physique. And to me, that's so rewarding.
And in this whole lifestyle too, I mean, what is that like knowing that you're setting I mean, obviously your child isn't really that old enough to really perceive what's going on, but like in the future to still have this sort of, lifestyle, how important is it to you to sort of set that example, just to say that, like, hey, you can be fit at any age and you can always be in shape no matter what circumstance there is?
It's the most important thing to me. Becoming a mom made me super aware that she's watching every single thing I do, and I want her to. I will obviously want her to get into bodybuilding, but whatever it is she
She's
decides,
gonna be that 5-year-old that's just absolutely jacked, just walking on the stage. Yeah.
I would love that. I would love her to, of course, follow my footsteps. At the end of the day, whatever she decides to do, I just want her to go
She's doing pull-ups in the background while we're talking to you, basically. Yeah, stuff like that.
baby pull-ups right now. I guess what I want her to understand that whatever it is she decides to do, she can, and she will fail at it, but it's okay to fail. Fail as many times as it takes to be successful. And I know that I just think of my experience with fitness and watching my dad do it when I was 5, and that was where it first planted that seed in my head, then became a big part of my life. I want that same thing for her, and I want her to just see that you can be a mother, you can be athletic, you can run a business, you can do all the things you want to do. You're not limited by your sex, by your financial circumstances. Your life is yours to create.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't think of a more better message myself too, because that's one of the things about this sport that I think when we talked about the mental side effects too, that just outweigh a lot of the physical stuff is, yeah, just realizing that, yeah, you can really, accomplish anything. And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh, a couple of people, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Obviously, got to give a shout out to my coach, Alicia Gowans. She's been amazing this last year. Has been my most successful year, and it wouldn't have been that without her. Shout out to my husband, Brad Crandall. He's super supportive. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it weren't for him. And then all of the SF Fitness girls back in Rhode Island, and my assistant coach, Emily Barnes. These girls are the hardest working girls in the sport.
And I'll leave a link down for all that stuff down below. So for everyone to go and check out. And like always, I'll leave a link to her Instagram page as well. So everyone, just be buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies and, get in shape. But, yeah. And just honestly, really the last question that I ask, a lot of guests is, this whole sport, there's just so much about it. And there's so little information about it as well. Like I asked you, like, what are one of the biggest, misconceptions that you deal with? And if there'd be one thing that you'd like the general public to know about the sport, what would it be?
One thing that it's more than just lifting weights.
Yes. I would say that a million times. Like I told you, most of the people that I talk to when I say, "Oh, I got some bodybuilders on," mainly I just get this reaction. Yeah, those people just work out a lot and they go on stage and they pose, and yeah, so you got about 1% of it. So that's that too. But again, thank you so much for coming on. I really really appreciate it, and honestly, I wish you nothing but the best. And I do hope to talk to you next year, having already won your crown. I honestly think you're going to do great. But again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. It was an absolute delight to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you in a year.
Absolutely. Well, again, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.